Morning, everybody. Welcome to today's meeting. Item 1, have we any apologies for absence?
We have Councillor Leach, Councillor Stogia and Councillor O'Rayman.
Thank you very much. Any other apologies? No? Item 2, Chair's announcements. I would just like to welcome, we've got Guy here from First, we've got Adam from Stagecoach, James, Transdev, and Nigel from MCT. Are we any other operators in? There's nobody. I know a few went up there originally, but we've invited them back down. Oh, welcome. Welcome to today. You don't have to sit up there, Gareth. You can come down here if you like. You're all right. You're always welcome down here. Okay. So, item 3, declarations of interest. If anybody's got any declarations, please hand them in to Nicola at the end of the meeting. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of September. Before we agree those minutes, I've just got some slight amendments I'd like to pass over to the committee.
Thank you. Just a few amendments on the minutes from the last meeting. On agenda pack page 9, the last paragraph, it reports that people have been incorrectly charged for Metrolink journeys, when in fact that they were correctly charged, you just hadn't touched out with their passes. So we're just going to change the first line of that last paragraph. And also the last line, it says logged out. We're just going to amend that to touched out. Then over the page, on page 10 of the main agenda pack, resolution 5, again, just to reflect what I've just said about failing to tap out, we're going to just change the wordings of that to say passengers have been charged because they failed to tap out. And resolution 6, we're just going to amend that slightly to say annual Metrolink performance report rather than future, just for clarity. Just a couple more. Over on page 14 of the main agenda pack, resolutions 6 and 7, was with regards to information on short forming and penalty fares. We're just going to add in there subject to data availability.
Okay, thank you very much. Can the committee move those as a correct record? Have you got something to raise on that? Okay.
Just again, a very slight amendment on page 12, page 8 of the agenda. The penultimate paragraph. Can we just add Romilly to the list of stations that we talked about, short notice cancellations, etc.?
We'll do that. Cheers, Angie. Okay. Now, on matters arising from those minutes, I've just got one issue for the committee. We had the CLES research information given out, but we failed to agree at the time which role we decided to go or ask CLES to do. So I'm just going to read them out. The first one was the role of public transport in reducing public health inequalities. And the role, number 2, is the role of the public transport in tackling economic disadvantage. So can I just have a vote, please, on who would prefer the role of public transport in reducing public health inequalities, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay. You don't need counting, we'll go with that. Okay, thank you very much. Has anybody got any other matters arising from those minutes? No? Okay, thank you very much. So, moving on.
Just mention that one, the mid-tier submission. It's not been submitted till the 18th of October.
All right, yeah. So, there's a slight amendment on the mid-tier submission is to be on the 18th of October. So, at the present, there's nothing further to report to members on that mid-tier. Okay? Item 5. GM Transport Committee Work Programme. Gwyn?
Thank you, Chair. The committee's consolidated work programme appears at item 5. If members have any queries about the destination of their requested items, we will try to answer if it's not clear. And do members have any comments on the programme?
Okay. Does anybody like any questions? Phil?
Thanks, Chair. On page 26, the age-friendly transport, I mentioned about 12 months ago if we could review the passes for elderly people, if we could review for them to be used before 9:30 in the morning. A lot of elderly people are struggling to get to hospital appointments and doctor appointments because they can't use the passes before 9:30. The officers said they'd take it away and look at it, but we've had no response back, and there's nothing in the report to say they review the concessionary passes.
We'll bring that back, Phil. No. Okay.
Do we want it including as part of that February item?
Not okay? Okay, I've got Howard.
Thank you, Chair, and it's thanks for allowing me to do this. What isn't in the work programme, and I was surprised because I was expecting it here today, is we used to get a report at least twice a year, if not 3 times a year, about shelters. And we've not had one yet since we've been configured this May. And the only reason I know is there's one I'm waiting for approval for in my part of the world, and I was promised it would be here today, and it isn't, and I haven't had an answer why. Yet when I look on the work programme, it's never going to get here. So I'm just wondering, have we overlooked, I'm being diplomatic, and where's our report on shelters? Because it can't be the only one. There must be a whole series of requests and where we've gone and done the work and it fits the criteria, it doesn't. So I don't understand why it's not here. And then I don't understand why it's not in the work programme to come to a subsequent meeting. Or is it part of a deliberate tack to slow, which I'm sure it isn't, to not do anything about shelters? Because that's, you know, got to be the conclusion, hasn't it? So can somebody tell me when we'll get our shelters report and the ones that fit the criteria, when we can agree them, and then we can crack on with it? Because on days like this, people need shelters, I can assure you.
Alison?
Yeah, certainly it is something that used to be presented to the previous bus network subcommittee. We'll take a look at that and certainly your outstanding issue there, Councillor Sykes, and bring a future report back to this meeting.
Can I just ask, in this brave new world we're in, does it ask to wait to come back here? Because we're like an advisory body or a consultative body. Can we not, when they meet the criteria? Is there not a different process? I suppose that's part of my question, where we can just get on with these. Why does it have to come here if it fits the criteria?
We'll discuss whether there is an alternative way we can do that. I'll take guidance from our colleagues after this.
We'll make sure you get an answer, Howard. No problem. Okay, anybody else got any more questions? Yep.
At the risk of showing myself up here, I think I might have missed something. In January, the last item for January is to receive the CLES report on health impact, etc. Have we not just voted upon that to say that? So we had an option of economic impact and health inequalities. Had that decision already, we've just voted on it, but had it... Yeah, I know, but I can't understand how it's in. We obviously hadn't voted, we've just voted on it, but it looks like it was pre-decided. Or have I missed something?
It's actually down for the outcomes of it.
Okay.
So,
right.
okay.
Just seemed odd. Thank you.
So, any more members? Roger?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. On page 27, it mentions transport and climate change, and I think, Simon, we need a report on. I mean, I know it's the only problem. It sounds a very simple heading, but I mean, you move into almost every area of transport. But I do think by December we could do with a report on, even if we're on our way to forming a policy. I think it's an urgent item.
Yeah, happy to do that, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else got any more questions on these minutes? No? Thank you very much. Item 6, transport network performance. I've got Alex.
Good morning, everyone. I'll start with Metrolink, and I'll keep it short and sweet because Danny on my left-hand side is actually going to do the Metrolink annual report immediately after this monthly update report for August. So I'll actually leave any questions around the Metrolink performance in August to Danny, if that's all right, just to save Danny repeating some of the content. In terms of rail, August, again, was a poor period, compounded by the Toddbrook Reservoir incident, alongside the usual weather and trespass factors. Some positive news: there was the first TPE Nova train in August on the Liverpool to Scarborough line via Manchester Victoria. Highway journey times in August touched on the usual school holiday period in terms of reduced volumes and improved journey times, and that was consistent this year with other years. That also did help maintain a good bus performance through August because of those reduced volume of traffic on the highway network. The our past work proceeded really well in August, and actually we now know with hindsight, because of where we are, what a success that was in terms of its launch and a real multi-partner approach. So a big thank you to everyone involved in that process. Events-wise, August was a challenging month, the start of the football season. We had the Pride event, and we also had Extinction Rebellion. And again, I think it's worth noting, again, the multi-agency approach with that caused absolute minimal disruption to travelling public through that event. So again, a big thank you to everyone involved. Apart from those sort of key factors in August, happy to take any questions on the report.
Okay, has any members got any questions on those? Yes, Steve?
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 33, item 3.8, where it talks about, further down on that particular bullet point, it talks about the 7,500 minutes delay and 91 cancelled services, but there's not a great deal of information there. Is there anything more you can tell us about that? Because obviously it is quite concerning that so much in just to one detail there. Is there anything more you can actually tell us about that?
Apologies, I thought that Northern were going to be joining us today, but they haven't been able to. I can certainly send you as much information as you like after the meeting. I think that would be easier. Is that okay?
Just to answer it, that was not one single delay. There was lots of attributable smaller minor delays that build that up, but we do have the detail and we'll forward that.
Doreen?
Thank you, Chairman. It's disappointing on 311 to find that ASLEF have rejected proposals going forward for Sunday working, because we've said for a long time on the rail we are now a 7-day working community. So I do find that disappointing, and I hope they can resolve it as soon as possible.
Phil?
Thanks, Mark. Sorry, Chair. Just a point of clarity. ASLEF did actually recommend the deal. Doreen, it was the members who rejected it. Apologies. Yeah, just for clarity.
Thanks, Mark. I attended the launch of the new train by Northern Areva a couple of days ago, and how many there's going to get over the next couple of weeks. Yet in the newspaper last night, it actually stated that Northern weren't getting rid of the Pacer trains. They're going to still carry on using the Pacer trains. Is there any information? Have we been misled here by Northern, saying one thing to us on the platform, yet giving another statement to the press stating they're not going to get rid of the Pacer trains?
I would suggest you take that up with Northern. They're not retaining Pacers per se. It's just that they're going to have to extend running them for a few more weeks, is what we are being told. So, but in terms of their comm strategy, I would take that up with them personally.
Doreen?
Yeah. Thank you. When I went to the first Pacer train retiring, I was told categorically that they would all be gone by 2020. So I think it is a few weeks. I don't think it's, another year or...
Paul Caroline and I was privy to a telephone conversation which we was told exactly the same thing as well. But I won't say you can't believe anything, sir, because they're not here, and I think it's unfair to do that. But I think we need to contact them and of our disappointment as this committee. Roger?
Chair, it's on the same issue that's just been raised, because I had the advantage of reading that Manchester Evening News article last night, and there were 3 issues that it raised. The first one you've already referred to about the Pacers, and it said both government and Northern have given a commitment they would all be gone at the end of this year, and now there will be at least 3 lines in the northwest of England that will have to continue with paces up to 2020. And the reason given, they said, was a delay in the new rail rolling stock. That was the excuse made. But Mark, because we're a transport committee, we cannot not refer to an item that's in the papers when it's of such major concern. And that same article didn't just stop at paces. It went on to say that the current franchise between the government and Northern was now £25 million in the red and growing daily, and that there are discussions between Northern and the government how they intend to deal with it. And then it went on to say that leaders of local authorities, and it didn't just mean in Greater Manchester, it meant across the north of England, were urging Transport for the North and the government to actually terminate the franchise because things were going from bad to worse. Now, that's an article in the Manchester Evening News, but nevertheless, officers of TFGM will have to advise this committee members whether these things are true or not, because if they are true, then it's going to have a major impact on the travelling public, who can see that things have not improved dramatically over the last 12 months, and there are regular cancellations over the weekend. Then we've got this news about the paces. So it's too big an issue. We can't not discuss it, and we can't not ask TFGM to give us a statement on whether these issues are true.
And we will do, but I think it's also fair to add to that, especially to new members, that this was phase 3. Okay, so phase 1 should have happened 3 years ago and has not happened. Phase 2 has not happened and was on phase 3, and now that's delayed. I think that's the most worrying bit. Would you like to come back on any of those comments that Roger's made?
I'll just add, Roger, of course we will continue to chase Northern, and it is a shame that Chris couldn't be here today because he had planned to. We've only just got that news as well, probably later than the MEN, if I'm honest, but we will follow up and we will make a statement back, Roger.
Okay. Has any other members got any questions they'd like to ask? No? Oh.
I'd like to say I told you so. But when we were discussing committees, this was the beauty of having a bus committee where you got shelters and a rail committee where this would have been discussed in detail.
To be fair, I think because it only happened last night, otherwise, on the normal committee structure, you'd still be waiting till the next committee before you'd be quoting on it. So, but that can be discussed at the next one anyway, if it's on the rail. Okay. Thank you very much. Item 7. Metrolink Annual Performance Report. Danny?
Thank you, Chair. Just a little bit of housekeeping, I guess, in the new committee structure, whereas we brought detailed Metrolink performance to every Metrolink and Rail Network committee previously. It was decided we would do initially this month an annual performance summary, but I think in the forward plan you will see a rolling annual summary, so we'll get to do this every sort of 3 months now. In the normal scheme of things, and previously the Metrolink operator, Cam, their managing director, did come to present with me and take questions. Unfortunately, Aline has now left the business and handed over to Guillaume Chanasso, but just because it's, I guess, early in his tenure, it wasn't in his diary, so he's not here today, so I'm on my own, so go easy on me. But now, aside from that, he will be here at the next one, and has expressed his intention to attend here and to be held accountable by this committee. There's a lot of detail in this report. I'm just going to touch on, pick out some of the things from the exec summary, and then I'm happy to sort of take questions. Being an annual report, the period we're covering is up until sort of the middle of August, just gone. In good news, I guess, but it brings with it its challenges. We're continuing to grow in patronage terms, some lines more strongly than others. There's a chart in here which shows that, but we're now over 45 million annual trips, which puts us ahead of our sort of forecast, which is a good news story. Obviously, that does lead to problems, complaints from passengers around capacity, which is probably our biggest challenge going forward, but I'll touch on that in a minute. In terms of During the period, we did add additional capacity on Bury and Altrincham and East Didsbury routes by means of double services, and we increased the frequency on the Ashton line to a 6-minute service from 12. So we've implemented some good sort of operational changes there over the course of the year. A couple of big things, obviously, that members will be aware of. We changed to a zonal fare structure in January, which was quite a success, and that enabled us to then introduce contactless, which we heard from last month, continuing to grow in terms of the number of passengers, up to, depending on events and so on, 70,000 journeys per week. Performance overall, over the course of the year, we had a difficult summer, I would say. There's a combination of issues there, a couple of overhead line faults, notably affecting the Eccles line, but mainly rolling stock issues. Whereas previously we had very high rolling stock reliability. I think a combination of things over the course of the summer have made performance dip slightly, which brings down the annual numbers, which up until around July were actually really, really good in terms of Metrolink's history. And they were around road traffic collisions, primarily taking trams out of service for longer than we would like. There was a very big spike in those earlier in the summer. Thankfully, that's since reduced. And also some braking issues during the sort of hot weather spell, which we've since got to the bottom of. But of course, the hot weather is no longer with us, but, so that shouldn't be a problem. So we've, in recent weeks, although not reported here, I guess turned the performance back around. So we're back onto the steady state that we were in terms of continuous improvement on performance. We're having less and less infrastructure issues. As I said, a couple of high-profile overhead line failures probably brought our overall performance measurements down a bit in recent months, and that's probably clear from the later chart. But by and large, we have reductions across the board on infrastructure, particularly signalling type failures, which historically have been the bane of Metrolink's performance. So by and large, good. We've also seen in recent months, despite some high-profile incidents, a reduction overall in the level of crime and antisocial behaviour as reported to Metrolink. That's not to say that it's gone away, but just to say that it is a relatively positive trend. And just to note that the Travel Safe partnership that we work in changes somewhat starting from next month with changes at GMP, which will mean more uniformed officers on the network, which is I guess a good thing, and we're watching that closely. We're working with the police to see how that helps Metrolink, but of course that unit is transport-wide, will hopefully help deal with some congestion, traffic enforcement type issues as well. In good news, I guess, Transport Focus, who's the, I suppose, independent national body who advocate for passengers, they measure Metrolink along with rail and bus operators throughout the year. Usually helps us benchmark ourselves against other rail operations in the UK. They have, through our engagement with them, I guess, at the beginning of the year, they've nominated us independently for Rail Operator of the Year at the National Transport Awards, which is a really good thing. Something we're incredibly proud of. That happens at the end of the month, and fingers crossed that we will do well. It's really great for a light rail operation to be up against some of the big rail operators. So I guess that's partly as a result of the fact that customer satisfaction, as measured by Transport Focus, remains relatively high at 90%, and improving numbers around the customer's perception of value for money and reliability and so on. Just a quick note, because I know it's important to this committee. CAM have obligations driven by the combined authority through our contract with them on social value. We've made good progress throughout the year. They've taken on 28 apprentices, particularly from underprivileged backgrounds. It was a really good news story. It lowers the average age of the organisation, actually, which is a good thing too. But also, we're now procuring more than 40% of products and services within a 25-mile radius of Greater Manchester, which is good for us. Then just in terms of benchmarking ourselves, as I say, so the Trafford Park line is obviously the big thing on the horizon for us, opens next year. We've also got new trams coming. which will hopefully deal with some of those capacity issues I mentioned earlier. But an interesting study, I guess, also, well, two studies, one by CAM, one independent, found that Metrolink, when we opened the Trafford Park line, our corridor between Cornbrook and St Peter's Square will be the busiest section of light rail anywhere in the world. That's a bit of a bold statement. I can't find anywhere else that will have a tram every sort of, we'll have 40 trams per hour per direction through that section, which is really good. And I guess benchmarking ourselves internationally, it means that we're really getting the most out of our assets, I suppose, proving value for money in terms of the past and current capital programs. So that's really where I'd like to end this, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions? Yes?
Thank you. At health meetings I attend, we're always told not to be topical or personal. But this isn't a health meeting, so it's not about my health. It's about it, but if I don't bring it up now, I'll probably forget to write a letter. But I noticed you say there were tram faults in the hot weather. Well, there are tram faults in the wet weather, I guess. Because one tram broke down on the Bury line. It's taken me, instead of 25 minutes from Bury, it's taken me 1 hour 35 minutes. And this affects hundreds of people, literally. And so what I'm going to say, I don't know the reason, I don't know what happened, but it's happened to me before, and it can't be helped, but I just wonder if there's any way of having a siding where you can somehow, and technical people can think about this, shunt that tram into temporarily, and then within 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, you get trams working. The second thing is information for passengers. And I know it's difficult, but when you're on Bury Station, there's nobody, no staff. It's not like a railway station where you can go and get at somebody. There are no staff there. And the sign kept saying there was a delay because of a fault on a tram. But there'd be a tram in 6 minutes, 8 minutes. It had them all, Altrincham, Piccadilly. And obviously nothing came for ages and ages, and people begin to get rebellious and so on. In the end, it said, you've got to go and get a bus. So most of us got, some went home, but we got buses to Whitefield. Then we all went on the wrong platform, and then a member of staff appeared to put us on the right platform, the Bury platform. And they turned trams back. We all got on a tram, and then we were told to get off that and get on another tram. Now, I assure you, I kept calm. And ate my breakfast. But there were people there getting very irate. They got things to get to, people to meet. So, to sum up, my two things are, is there any way one tram breaks down, it doesn't cause hours of disruption? Because there were still no trams going to Bury. I don't know how long it lasted. And second point, information, that people are properly informed. You've got these things at Bury, which you haven't got on bus stops, electric signs. Tell them just what's happening and where they're going and what's going to happen. I think it's not going to be solved this week, but I think for the future, something's got to be done about the information system on the trams, because we do get, even if it's only 10% breakdown, cause delays, it affects lots of people, particularly at peak time. I've got it off my chest, I could say more, but I'll leave it there to think about.
I never like presenting in front of this committee when an incident has happened on the morning of my presentation. So yeah, there was a failed double tram on the Bury line this morning. It failed in a tunnel. It was quite a difficult situation to get out of. There was passengers on board that vehicle. Obviously, when CAM respond to something like that, safety of passengers is the first and foremost, I guess. It did take a while because it was, obviously at the top end of the Bury line, if you know what I mean. There are generally places across our network where we can put trams into sidings and so on, or into pocket tracks. So we do have some emergency facilities, and there are contingency plans around for tram breaks down in certain areas. It's not always possible. It's difficult because it was in a tunnel this morning, particularly. It did take a while. And I think, yeah, so just, my apologies for that experience this morning. I think we can do better without any investment really. It's more about people and how we communicate. I know that the operator have just republished their own what's called disruption management plan, which gives a standard set of messages depending on a whole bunch of scenarios. They had one last year. We did see a big improvement. That's something that customers did feedback on. But, then, tested that out through various disruptions throughout the course of the year. We have a new plan. We will learn from things like this morning as to how we can do things better, switching off the forecast, passenger information, display information, making more announcements, making the drivers make announcements a bit more proactively. But like you say, some of the situations can be complicated. It's difficult to get the message to the drivers on that line and so on, and actually put the contingency plans in place. So it does take time. My apologies for this morning, but I think we can get better.
At least the escalator was working today, thank goodness.
As I'm sure it is on most
it's much
days.
improved.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Hey, can you switch your mic off? Warren?
Thank you, Chair. Just regarding safety, really, passenger safety and employee safety on the Metrolink. We were told some meetings ago that by a police inspector it's going to be this new super duper unit set up, and they were withdrawing the police community support officers, and they would be replaced by fully uniformed police officers. I do believe that there's been a delay in the switchover. There are elements that use the Metrolink regularly, and where these hot spots are, Danny. I'm asking you, are there any interim measures that you can take, i.e. taking on perhaps private security firm, to deal with that until the police safety unit is properly set up?
So I'm not fully across the policing side of that unit. It probably is a welcome development to have more uniformed officers, and I know we are going through the process now with GMP, with the operators, to see what that's going to actually look and feel like on the ground. In terms of just Metrolink specifically, so we are in talks with the operator. The Trafford Park line obviously opens next year, so in theory that brings with it an increased number of staff. From a customer service perspective, we are looking at whether we have the balance right between more sort of security staff or customer service related staff. So it is possible to do a little bit more for us. When you say delays, I don't think the delays are very long, like we heard about the rail. I think it's weeks rather than particularly long amount of time, months. So hopefully we won't have to do too much differently. But yeah, we are, I guess, constantly looking at whether or not we have the balance right and what more we can do as Metrolink on our own. Is that okay?
Joanne?
Thank you, Chair. Can you just confirm for me, you were saying about the line from Cornbrook to St Peter's Square, and you said that you've ordered additional trams, which will obviously cover that. Are these in addition to the 27 that's been ordered for the Trafford Park line, or is this part of the 27?
No, in fact, as it stands today, we have the vehicles for the Trafford Park line. The 27 was, I suppose, recognising capacity constraints on the network. So when we got some funding last year, we managed to place an order. So the 27 are additional to anything for the Trafford Park line, if you know what I mean. So what you'll see when they start to arrive, and we'll probably put them out on service really as soon as we can, is we'll make more double units on the existing routes. So we'll be providing more capacity on existing routes. So we'll open the Trafford Park line with the fleet that we currently have, if you know what I mean. No. So the 27 are new, and they will arrive next year. But so we already have the vehicles for the Trafford Park line, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Okay, Stuart?
Thank you. You mentioned the zonal affairs thing had gone quite smoothly. What has been the feedback from the customer element? Have people been relatively pleased? Have there been any hiccups on the way? And a second thing is, I'd just like to, for information, could we have a small report on how many people are actually employed by Metrolink in terms of drivers, administrators, maintenance, etc.? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Haslam. The Metrolink operator employs just under 950 people. well, actually, I won't start quoting numbers. I can give you the detailed breakdown as to whether they're drivers or customer service staff or, you know, back office controllers, the whole engineers and maintenance people. But so I'm quite happy to do that. But in total, it's around 950. In terms of zonal, yeah, the customer feedback was really good. So going back to January, I think it took a little bit of time for people to understand the new ticket vending machine screens. It's fair to say, because you have to know what zone you're travelling in and what zone you're travelling to. But I think once the majority of people understood it, what zonal did for us was enabled people to make more journeys for a day travel card. So we got rid of returns, and you buy a travel card instead from a zone 1 to a zone 2. But that enabled people to, you know, travel into town after work, for example, as long as it's within the same zone. So probably people are making more journeys, so they're getting better value for money in that way. So by and large, it was a very positive thing. And then that coupled with contactless, the customer feedback has been largely good. There has been a few problems with contactless. I think we heard at the last meeting. Some passengers are forgetting to touch off at the end of their journeys, which in some instances means that they probably pay a little bit more than they should, but we're offering refunds to those people once they get in touch with us. But that's a small number. So by and large, positive feedback, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. It's a quick one. It's quite a long and comprehensive report and quite interesting. The one I'd like to see more information about is actually really to do with the social value policy. I was looking through section 6, which says it's the corporate social responsibility, but it's not quite the same thing there. And I think, is there any information we have about their social value policy? Because I mean, a lot of organisations, I know that Network Rail have one, and I've seen some of theirs, but it'd be quite interesting to see what we actually do on Metrolink for social value. Thank you.
Happy to bring more detail on that in future. I think what we did, though, was the Combined Authority have a social value policy. And I think people like the City Council, I'm not across the detail of this, put it into all of their procurements a big bit. We did the same thing with Metrolink. So pretty much the social value policy reflects the Combined Authorities one. So it's back to back, sort of in the contract. So that's what we did when we procured it.
Howard?
Yes, just briefly. Very comprehensive report, and I welcome that in that sense, but because you've got the original data, you pull out things. So if I just look at page 46 or 47, the reasons for this, that and the other, failure of the points at Bury, damage at Deansgate, whatever. It's been asked for before here. Is it possible to have some of this information presented on a line-by-line basis? Because having it all lumped together, I think, potentially masks some issue. And obviously, I'm particularly interested in the Oldham-Rochdale line, because I'm particularly interested in the ASB, because it has been a major issue. People keep telling me we're getting hold of it. I'm less than convinced. And if you want to convince me, you'll give me the data separately for the line rather than it lumped into everybody else. And I know it's a question Sean's asked before. I think we're all on the same page. So I suppose if you are as confident as you say you are, I'd like to see some of this data presented on a line-by-line basis, as I'm sure my colleagues in Bury would like to see information on the Bury line rather than it lumped into everything else. I appreciate with some of the journeys it's not possible because people move, but it must be possible to present some of the information rather than on a whole of the network on a line-by-line basis, because I think we might need to have a different approach on different lines to different issues, be it reliability, ASB, or some of the other issues. So, not shooting the messenger, useful in terms of the data in this, but we have asked before if we can have a by-line breakdown, and I'm a little disappointed that when we've got this time, and I think it was Councillor Fielding from Oldham who asked last time, it's not incorporated in this report this time.
Thanks, Councillor Sykes. It was in fact your colleague, Councillor Leach, who asked at the last meeting that question. Happy to provide it. We do have the information on line by line. It's obviously very difficult to present an annual summary and then, you know, because we have 7 lines, we serve 7 of the districts, it's very difficult to then put all of that in. We'd have a huge report. But what I will point out is we do publish on a monthly basis a line-by-line breakdown of the 2 main measures, the sort of punctuality, reliability statistics. So if members are interested, it's on our website. I won't quote the website now, but on the tfgm.com there is a section that has Metrolink performance on a monthly basis, and it's quite informative. One of the slides is in here as Appendix whatever it is, 1 or 2. But that is available online to everybody on a monthly basis. So we have that information. Happy to provide members with breakdowns for their districts on a periodic basis. Not sure this is the best forum for it because it's a 3 monthly in depth on Metrolink. Can do for the next time, absolutely. But we can respond to members' questions, queries about their lines individually if that's more appropriate.
Howard?
I'm not quite so sure what that answer was then, but I'm here to scrutinise this. It's the only forum I have. We've asked for the data before. We've been given assurance it'll be. If you want to present it in a different form, you want to email it me on a monthly basis away from the committee, that's fine. But I'm formally asking for it here. Other people have asked for it, and it's been agreed, and I still ain't got it. So my question is, can I have it, please? Thank you.
And I think he's answered that, to be fair, Howard. He did say he would send it to any individual member if he wanted it. So, yes, he will. Okay. No problem. Right. Anybody else got any more questions? No? Thank you very much. Item 8, forthcoming changes to the bus network. Nick?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Familiar report to go through the forthcoming changes to the bus network. 3 sections. We'll go through each section at a time and take questions and comments. Let's kick off with Annex A. Annex A relates to service changes made by the commercial operators in this particular area. So, happy to open up with questions or comments, Chair.
Anybody got any questions on Annex A? Roger?
Yeah. I'm on page 10 talking about Service 180. I am on the right item, aren't I?
You are.
Yes, right, good. I've been in touch this morning with Councillor Fielding and Councillor Sykes from Oldham because representations were made yesterday by a local resident, Mr Knowles, asking for a change to what is proposed by First Group. Now, we've all read the email, and I think we all think it's quite a sensible email. So what we're asking is, will TFGM agree to talk to First about Mr Knowles' proposal and see whether you can come up with basically it would be a compromise position. The worry about this change from First is that it does adversely affect the local people in Greenfield, and the suggested revision is still a reduction in service, but a better way, we think, of doing it. So I'm just asking for an assurance that TFGM will talk to First about Service 180, subject to what First have to say, that is.
Can I come in, Chair?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Jones. Yeah, I spoke to Ian Humphreys this morning, fully aware of the email change and the comments that were made, which I think were positive. Initially, I think it's fair to say that these were proposals that were put back to First to make commercial changes. So really the discussions at this stage are with First and in their hands for them to make changes to their commercial network, because it was initially their changes. We are more than happy to facilitate any discussions and to support them in that context. So yeah, those discussions are ongoing, and I think are positive, certainly between First and the community that kicked these off. So yes, that is in motion at the moment, and we'll do anything we can to support that going forward.
Kai, have you got anything to come in on that, please?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yes, we received the email from Mr Knowles yesterday evening, and we will give it due consideration and discuss it with TFGM to see what's feasible or not in the timescales permitted. I would like to say that these revisions, we have been in discussions with TFGM about these proposals, so it's not new news, but that's not to say we can't look at some things that people have brought to our attention that causes them some concern. Our MD in Humphreys has been very much involved in these changes, and he's always stresses, okay, he couldn't make it today, but he's got an open door. If anybody ever wants to have a meeting with him to discuss any elements of of our operations, he's always up for to have a meeting with people. So we will look at this change that's been suggested by Mr. And we'll see what we can do, and we'll possibly have a discussion with TFGM about what can be done. Okay, thanks, Chair.
Howard?
And thanks for the helpful comments. I think we're all broadly on the same page here. I appreciate what you're saying, that you've been in discussion with TFGM, but, you know, as I often say, if you'd let us humble members get our hands on it sooner, we sometimes come up with better solutions for residents, because we have something to contribute to this process. But that's not a criticism of anybody involved. The other request is, if we're going to have a look at this, and I'm great and I'm pleased they haven't had support that, because as I understand the proposals, it does make a financial savings, maintains a service, and actually means you have to use one less bus. So I think everybody wins. The issue for me is, if we're going to start terminating services at Oldham for people making the onward journeys, can we look at the issue of through ticketing, so they don't have to buy one and then get off by another? So if buses are going to terminate in Oldham rather than in Manchester, can I buy a ticket in Greenfield that will get me to Manchester, even if I have to get off the bus and get on another bus and whatever? And I think that's another consideration, that not just on this service, but on a number of other services, in terms of what you appear to be doing with your network. And it's not a criticism, where you tend to be making the journeys shorter, so you're getting the reliability up, as I understand it. In terms of people making longer journeys, I do think we need to look at a through ticketing operation, but I'd support the proposal, like you said, from Roger Jones, and whatever, in terms of looking at this, that makes sure the biggest conurbation in Saddleworth, which is Greenfield, maintains a service, a reduced one, rather than what's proposed. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that. Phil?
Thanks, Chair. While we welcome the decision by First to go northwest, to introduce the 5-minute service between Manchester and Middleton, can we instruct the drivers to pick people up along the way that tend to be going past bus stops, leaving people stranded at bus stops? And considering we've had major problems with a 10-minute service, I hold my breath to see how this 5-minute service will pan out.
Just to add my support to the comments made around the services in Greenfield, and if we can come up with a solution that doesn't see a significant reduction in those services, because I have been lobbied about it by local members and local residents up in that part of Oldham. I do want to say that I welcome the principle of splitting services at Oldham Town Centre. I think that should improve reliability on the Manchester Road corridor and improve reliability for people on the other side of Oldham. Many of whom, I understand, only travel between the destinations on the other side of Oldham and Oldham itself, and it's relatively small numbers that go on to Manchester. I'm sure that Guy will be able to answer Councillor Sykes' question about through ticketing, but it was just to say that I do support the principle of making the length of route shorter, because I do think that it will have an improvement in terms of reliability.
Yes, thanks, Chair. First and foremost, I'd like to put these changes are not about making a saving. It's about trying to improve reliability and actually trying to make the product easier for the passengers to understand. So it's not driven by as a cost-saving exercise. Mr. Knowles' suggestion is that it may make what he's suggesting is going to make a saving. We're not sure about that, but we'll look at it. We're not looking to make a saving. We're just looking to see what best service we can provide. So we will consider his proposals, because we'll need to do a worktop timetables and look at the options of what is suggested in his note that went around last night. As far as through fares are concerned, yes, we can consider it, but I would like to point out that any passengers that will need to change in Oldham, by the very nature, will be long-distance journeys. So passengers making long-distance journeys, the vast majority of those are not purchasing single tickets. There's very few people that buy single tickets for long journeys. It is the most economical way for them to travel at the moment is to buy a first day ticket, first week ticket, or whatever it will be. So there's no financial, there isn't any financial penalty for the vast majority of passengers. Okay, thanks, Chairman.
Okay, I've got Roy.
So I'm referring to Diamond buses who've taken over some routes from First. Particularly I'm thinking of Rochdale, Bury, Bolton. And I know it's teething troubles, but I'm just putting a marker down on it. People would expect me to mention it. The service has got worse. We're told there's a lack of drivers. I don't know, some may not have tupied over from First. They may have taken the money and run, I don't know. But there's a lack of drivers. It wasn't helped recently by vandalism, no fault of Diamond at their bus depot in Bolton. Smashing up buses didn't help. And it's also the fact that they send sometimes little single-deckers, whereas on much of the 4-7 route you can fill a double-decker. It's a popular route. So there is a problem with timekeeping, 3 buses coming at once when they do come at the Bolton bus station and so on. So all I'm asking, if there's no one here from Diamond, is to perhaps have a short report. Somebody said it won't interest everybody in Greater Manchester, but what is the position with Diamond? Can they cope with the contract? Can they sustain? It may be a good company, I've never heard of them before, but can they sustain it? Are the problems short term, or can we see a better performance in the future? Because people are complaining all the time. Thank you.
That's commercialised routes, right?
Yeah,
that you're on about.
Oh, I know, you can blame Mrs Thatcher.
I just wanted to make clear that there was no contracts from us on that, because they were all
No, but we have an
commercialised.
oversight of it, don't we?
I agree with you. Stuart?
Thank you. It's merely a comment to say how pleased I am to see the extension of the Logistics North Bolton link serving the Logistics North. I think it has been quite well used. What does worry me is, and I was given some figures earlier this week, it's the number of refusals that is quite high, that people are phoning up and there's just not the capacity of the service in certain instances, and whether this can be addressed. I mean, this doesn't cost TFGM anything because it is subsidised, it is paid for by a Section 106 agreement. And the other question is why it's not coming into effect till the 26th of January, because, you know, there's likely to be quite a lot of seasonal employment at Logistics North, at Amazon and places, in little centres, and could it not be brought forward a little bit to December so it can provide a service for the temporary workers? Thank you.
I think we've strayed into Annex C, even though we're still on Annex A. But has anybody else got any more questions on Annex A? We'll get that answer shortly, Stuart, okay? No, do you want to move on to Annex B?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Annex B, very short. It was supplementary paper went out. The planners looked at the areas where we felt we needed to step in, and there was a short bit of support we felt we needed to do in the Durker area on a Sunday and some early evenings, and we'll cover that in more detail in the financial update in Part B. So if I can, Chair, I'll go into Annex C. Really, these are just minor changes, often to reflect tinkering to reflect the commercial changes. Just picking up on Councillor Haslam, we're obviously positive towards the changes. A lot of it is to just do with contract agreements in terms of having to feed that in as to why it starts. I will have a look at if there's anything we can do, but I think that would be tied into contract agreements. But we will note your point because I think it's a valid one. And also the fact that there is refusals probably is a sign that it's doing well. We're probably a victim of our own success. But we'll go back and have a look at that and see if there's anything around capacity issues going forward. But happy to take any questions or comments, Chair, on Annex C.
You okay on that, Stuart? Anyway, Phil?
Chair, can we just thank Nick and the officers for listening to the councillors' concerns in relation to the 455, 458. It's been noted in the council and we're happy with the changes taking place. Thanks to your officers.
Cheers for that, Phil. Anybody else got any other questions? No? Thank you very much. So, can I ask if item 9 and 10 can be brought together in reality, because it's connected in a lot of ways? Is the committee okay with that? Smashing. I'll pass over to both Bob and Simon then for a double act. Thank you.
Good morning. As you're probably aware, the prospectus was launched on the 26th of September, and I believe a copy's been circulated to all members, and you should also have a paper copy. It covers 4 key aspects. 1, making the best use of what's available today. 2, delivering more capacity and better connectivity. 3, a devolved and accountable rail-based network for GM. And 4, integrated travel between all of the modes. Key to this will be the outcome of the Williams review that no doubt most members have heard about. When we get that, that will certainly give us a strong steer on how far our ambitions can go for the future. At that, I'll hand over to Simon for the following item, and we'll take joint questions if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether I'm the straight man or the funny man in this double act. So the additional report that we've included here was in response to members' understandable requests to understand in a little further detail 2 of the key items that are dealt with within the rail prospectus. The first of which is high-speed rail and the combination of HS2 and also Northern Powerhouse Rail. So as we set out briefly in the report here, our advice to the Combined Authority and the Combined Authority's position remains that both HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail are critical long-term elements within the overall rail prospectus and the overall rail policy for Greater Manchester. I think one point that I would stress, and I think hopefully we've made that very clear now within the prospectus, is that they are not alternatives to solving the rail problems of today. And within the prospectus, that's one of the elements that we've been very keen to look to set out very clearly. There are a range of different deliverables that are needed over time in order to address the challenges that we face on our railway today. There are then a set of opportunities for us to expand our railway so that it's ready for the growth that it can support over the longer term. We've undertook a wide range of work with both Transport for the North and the Department for Transport over recent years in support of HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail, and we've set out about 18 months ago now a growth strategy for the 2 rail stations, showing how not only HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail can contribute as a railway in itself to growth within Greater Manchester, but also we can go considerably further in terms of the relationship between the stations, adjacent regeneration, the opportunities for HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail to then support what we want to achieve from a wider connectivity perspective in Greater Manchester and deliver wider growth across the city region, and also the real opportunities that that level of sustained investment in railway can offer both to local skills opportunities and local supply chains here in Greater Manchester. There is a review underway at the moment at a national level of HS2. We have come together with a number of northern authorities in particular to set out very clearly how we believe the review should approach the issue of HS2 to strengthen a number of the working arrangements around HS2 and also to strengthen its relationship back to the core economic growth agenda. Second element summarised in the report is the concept of tram-train. This is an issue that over the years we've brought to members and the combination of the completion of the work that's taking place around the Metrolink programme and also the agenda that we've set out in the prospectus means that there's now a fresh momentum for us to potentially carry Tramtrain forwards in Greater Manchester. We see that taking place over 2 phases. Ultimately, we've started to identify a series of corridors through the 2040 delivery plan that could have the potential for Tramtrain. And in the nearer term, we have identified some locations where we can test the technology around Tramtrain in Greater Manchester and then be ready as Greater Manchester to work with the rail industry on a longer term programme. And I've joined by my colleague Martin Lax, who's leading that exercise, because you may ask me a technical question which Martin is far better placed to answer than I am. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, anybody got any questions? Yes?
Thank you, Chair. In the rail prospectus, I was very pleased to see a particular emphasis on the Stockport area rail infrastructure improvements. I think what I'm very keen to see really is just in terms of the work that has already taken place and the work that is set to take place in trying to get Network Rail to come to the table to deliver the improvements that are needed. Obviously, it's not just a local sort of issue. Obviously, it has effects further up the line, as is pointed out within the prospectus. So I think for me, what I'm really keen to know is what work has taken place so far and what work is planned to take place going forward to get Network Rail to deliver the improvements that are desperately needed. Thank you.
So there's a wide range of issues to be addressed through Stockport, and there are different arrangements that are being put in place for the different elements. So near term, obviously, Stockport Station now sits at the heart of the First Mayoral Development Corporation area. That's given us a fresh opportunity to revitalise work that's been underway between ourselves, the Council and Network Rail for some time now, to get very clear in terms of what land around Stockport Station is needed in the future for the station and also for what we might want to achieve through the station from a Tramtrain perspective, and what land might we be able to exploit around the station as part of the Mayoral Development Corporation to help contributions into the station. So that's point one. Point two is that there is a programme of work underway to make sure that we fully understand what the first phase of HS2 through Stockport Station will mean for the station. For a period of time under the current plan for HS2, HS2 will run to Crewe and then will run on conventional tracks into central Manchester through Stockport. We anticipate changes that will be needed at Stockport Station through that period in order to make that work. And then longer term, there's a release capacity that's then provided on the system. How do we make sure that Stockport Station sits at the heart of that future network? And how do we capitalise on that to best effect? And again, there's work that we're now looking to revitalise, particularly as we come out of the HS2 review in terms of that longer term prospectus. So there's a lot of work underway at the moment around Stockport Station.
Okay, Roger.
Yeah, just a few things, if I may. On high-speed rail, Chair, I hope TFGM will try and put people right, because this week and last week there were articles in the paper saying if we cancel High Speed 2, we'll have all this money over and then everybody can have all these extra railway stations they want throughout the country and all the rest of it. But people just misunderstand the problem. If our roads are congested, our railways are congested, and you can't get any more trains through most of the pinch points, and Manchester is a typical example. So promising people railway stations is fine, but you won't have any trains to run on them, because you need high-speed rail to get the fast trains off the normal tracks in order to allow more local services. Now, if people don't understand that, well, then they don't know very much about the railways, is all I can say. So this false promise, I know we're near a general election and everybody's promising everything on everything at the moment, but if high-speed rail is cancelled, there will be no loads of extra trains because there is no capacity to take those extra trains. And people need to just go into it in a bit of depth to find out that that's true. The tram train, Simon, you can talk to me forever about tram trains, but Andrew Fender, if he was here now, would be saying to you that he visited Karlsruhe over 30 years ago to see their tram train, and in the UK, we still have only got one trial going on in Sheffield, and that's it, after 30 years. Now, doesn't that tell you something about government stroke Department for Transport Policy? They don't like trams, and they obviously don't like tram trains very much, except that they've warmed to them all of a sudden. Now, whether they've warmed to them because they mean it, or whether they've warmed to them because it just puts the evil day off because they know tram trains 15 years away, I'm not sure. But what I can tell you, because this is up to date, the latest staffing structure from the Department for Transport has the ministers at the top, has the civil servants all over, and there isn't one mention of trams in that whole structure, not a mention. And that's because they don't rate trams. They only like the rail, the heavy rail. That's what they like. And the tram train, I think, is just being told to everybody because it buys them off. Oh, don't worry, you can have a tram train. You know, not in my lifetime you won't get a tram train. You might get one years down the line. I would rather us talk about expanding the Metrolink system because we've done it repeatedly over the last 30 years and we can keep doing it, not to every village in the whole of Greater Manchester, but certainly to every major conurbation. And that's what we need to press on with now, as much as we possibly can.
So I think the central point to make there, Chair, is I've specifically written a report on tram train. That doesn't mean that we're turning our back at all on developing the case for the expansion of the Metrolink system. We already have a full funding submission in with government at present to expand Metrolink out through the Terminal 2 development at Manchester Airport, and we set out clearly within the 2040 delivery plan a number of other corridors where there is a case now for us to bring forward investment cases for Metrolink expansion. However, there are certain rail corridors that we have in Greater Manchester where tram train may prove to be the best solution because of the mixed nature of traffic that's always going to take place through those corridors, and it's on those corridors in particular where we're looking at tram train as opposed to direct Metrolink per se.
Okay, I've got Sean.
I'm going to follow up Councillor Jones's comments about extra stations by asking for one now. So Oldham has a long-standing aspiration for an extra station at Diggle, as I'm sure many of you are already aware. It's in our local plan, but it's just not currently included on the map that's been lifted from the 2040 strategy on this page. I know that the officers from Oldham have asked for some feedback on why that may be, and they're just yet to receive it, so I'm asking for it here, and hopefully it will be forthcoming soon. Thank you.
So I suppose it's worth saying, Chair, that the delivery plan is currently a draft delivery plan, and we're reviewing all of the consultation responses that we had to the draft delivery plan with local authority officers at the moment.
Right.
It's an assurance that it will be a decision of the combined authority on the basis of the proposition that we put forward. So.
Let's not talk amongst ourselves. Let's keep in the meeting. Roy?
Thank you. Page 20, about first and last mile is the heading, and it gives me something to hang on, a bit of praise. I recently went on the train from Bolton to Wigan for football reasons. Pardon?
To the promised land you were going to.
Yes, I went to Wigan, Railway and Swan, is it? Anyway, my journey back after losing was made much better by coming through Hindley. And I don't want to demean West Horton, they've done a good job, but I've never seen a station as nice as Hindley in recent years. And so it's not just about the approach to the station. It very often is. Sometimes you get off trains at any town and walk down the worst part of the town, you know, scrapyards and things. But Wigan, for example, going to the ground. But what I'm saying here is it needs thinking about. They put a lot of work in. I'm sure it's friends of Hindley Station. And those who've seen it know what I mean. Those who haven't, take a trip to Hindley just to see the station. So it's not just about the approach, it's about the station itself. And I know there are friends of Whaley Bridge and friends of Levenshulme and so on from a relative who works in the railway industry. But I think if people want to do something like this, and it's a lot of time, they need to visit there to see what can be done. And I think we should at least, one line, acknowledge what those friends... Perhaps you've done it last year, 2 years ago, I don't know. But as a transport authority, we should acknowledge the volunteers who put the effort in there to make it, to beautify it. And so what we've got to think about is how we encourage other friends groups and give them ideas. Is it practical? Because I'll tell you, Ince isn't that good. With all due respect to the people of Ince, that's not very appealing. Okay, I'll leave it there, but I just wanted to praise the Friends of Hindley Station.
It's noted. You want just come in on,
Yes, thank
on
you,
that?
Chairman. When I took over Chair of Rail, I started a community friends action, not an action day, but a get-together once a year, where it was their day. All the friends from any station could come, give us a short demonstration of what they did, and then network with each other. And it has been hugely successful. Mark Angelucci organises it for me now when I go on the day. But there are lots of friends groups, and they do a wonderful job. You know, I just want to say that they are superb, and there are lots of them.
You do, and we agree with that. Angie?
Well, it's going to be two things, but that last item, I want to talk about that as well. The first is page 13. My request is for a station as well. I was surprised to see on the plan that on the Stockport to Altrincham line, there's no mention of a station for Cheadle. Now, that is one where you're nodding, you know. But yeah, Cheadle, the old station still has a platform there. It's actually within easy walking distance of the Alexandra Hospital, which is a major employer in Cheadle, and 90% of people drive to it. So anything that can get people out of their cars and onto public transport would be great. So I'd love to see that included in the plan. Point 2 is you've mentioned the tram train out to Marple. Is this going to just be from Manchester, or please could you consider a rail route into Stockport? There is no rail link from that side of Stockport, Marple, Romley, etc., into Stockport. It's just to Manchester. And the roads, I mean, this is my own area, the roads are very, very congested there. And again, anything that would provide an alternative would be very, very welcome. Third point about friends groups, they're called station adopters. Hindley won a national award last week, the ACO, that's the Association of Community Rail Partnerships. They won a major national award for their work with young people and, I was going to say not disenfranchised, but people with problems and what have you. Yeah, disadvantaged people. I've met the lady, it's one woman that runs it, I can't remember her name, but she works so very, very hard there. I'm actually secretary of our local Friends of Romley Station, and again, we work really hard, and we do go around to other stations and look at them. And one thing that does happen is, for once, it's something good that Northern have done. A recent manager on the line that we're on and in that area did hold group meetings for the different station groups to come and talk. And we now have a new manager on that line, Alison, not Alison, Patricia, and we're hoping she's going to carry them on. So we do get support, and we very much welcome it. because we realise that we're doing work that really years ago the rail companies used to do. So we're picking up the slack from them. So we feel that support from them is very, very important.
That's been noted as well. Peter?
Thanks, Chair. I've got 2 points now. I'll start with the second one, which is about stations and their appearance. It must be getting on for 3 years ago, maybe 4, that this committee agreed to fund a Greater Manchester Best Station plaque. And I don't know where it's gone. It's slipped. Maybe it's been subsided or something. But we did agree to that. My main concern is on the tram train. I fully support it, but we've been talking about it for a few years. I spoke to Andrew Fender, for people who don't know him, and I was asking about the Piccadilly to Hadfield, Rosehill lines, which he thought would be good. He told me that the tram train would dip down to street level. Now, is that correct? Because it's going to cost £300 million to do that. And I'd sooner see that money spent on other services and leave the system as it is now, because it's the best service in Greater Manchester, Piccadilly to Hadfield.
Okay, Chair. Just to come back on the Stockport question, Cheadle is a location that we identified on the map for a new station. Biggest challenge through that corridor at the moment is that it's a single track railway at present, and therefore the upgrade of that corridor, whether that's in rail or tram train form, is actually really important in order to allow us to then be able to bring forward the case for additional stations, and they're totally linked to each other. We've done a lot of work recently with Stockport colleagues around a whole range of different potential rapid transit corridors into Stockport, including looking at whether the Marple corridor could also lend itself for a link into the town centre. It's a very challenging business case because it doesn't have a very large destination at one end like the airport or the city centre. So we're continuing to look at it with them, but it's a very, very difficult investment case to make. The issue in terms of tram train, so in principle, a tram train line could drop down on street at the far end. That's not really where our thinking's going in the first instance. Our thinking instead is to explore whether there are benefits to be had from tram train operation into the central hub of Manchester that allows us to take some services out of the train shed, in effect, and onto a tram line instead. That means that we can then give general network benefits across the area, as opposed to necessarily getting into considerations of any street running at the other end.
Okay, I've got Joanne and then Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just go back to Councillor Clark, Councillor Walker's comments on the Hindley Station. As you know, it is a Friends group and they did win awards. As a lead member of Green and Wigan, I'm involved in a lot of the Friends groups. And can I just say that they also won an award last night for Wigan in Bloom. But I just want to say that I will pass on your comments. And yes, we do need more of these groups for our stations because it is fantastic. But I will definitely pass on those comments this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. I mentioned under the buses about Logistics North. Now, the railway line, which might be a tram train, the Wigan to Manchester line, passes at the bottom of Logistics North. Sue, the developers of Logistics North, are anxious to get a station there, and I'm a bit upset that it's not included in a proposed station. And obviously, it's a lot easier to get a tram stop there than a rail, than if it's continuing as a rail line. And I think they said they would have shuttle buses from that to serve all the employment places. So I think that is an omission from this. And the other point is, and I'd like to just flag it up again, is some connection from Bolton to utilising the old Bolton to Wharton railway line as a tram or some other form of sustainable transport to link in from Bolton Town Centre through the hospital, because that's where the old railway line serving the Royal Bolton Hospital, linking up at Wharton. I mean, it does tick a lot of boxes in terms of employment, in terms of going through relatively deprived areas, etc. So if you could just make those comments, please.
Yeah, I mean, we can come back on the latter element. In terms of the former element, that I know that the council have talked to us about various variants of Dobbrow and Little Hulton, which could or couldn't play into considerations around logistics north. So I think it's important to see this map at the moment as indicative locations as opposed to absolutely nailed on specifics, because clearly, as a case for a station comes forward, we need to look at a number of local alternatives within a locality to work out how do they best relate to adjacent housing, employment sites and so forth.
Okay, thank you everybody for taking part on that. I'm going to move on now to item 11, exclusion to the press and public. Can we move those, please? Thank you. And on doing that, I'd like to thank you very much to all the operators that attended today. Thank you.